All right, Mrs. Peterson, I think we're recording.
Okay.
So I do a podcast now. This one's...
Podcasters.
What's that?
We're podcasters.
We're podcasters now. So this one's for parents. I suppose students could watch it if they want it, but it's for parents. And so you're Mrs. Peterson. So why don't you tell people, I'm Mr. Morton, I'm the principal. What do you do here?
Hi, I'm Mrs. Peterson, and I'm a case carrier here at Temecula Middle School. I'm also an 8th grade concepts, language arts, and social studies teacher.
That's right. And you're the special education department chair, too.
Yes, I am.
So you're in a lot of the IEP meetings for your own students, but also for a lot of the other students, too.
I spend a lot of time at school in IEP meetings, and
Okay.
enjoy them very much.
Okay, good. So I thought the first thing we could talk about is what does special ed look like at TMS, or we can just say the middle school, because it looks a little bit different than high school, but it looks a lot different, I think, than elementary school. So a lot of times 6th grade parents have tons of questions. I think sometimes 5th grade teachers aren't even really sure what we do here at TMS. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Where should we start?
In contrast to the elementary school, the way we serve our students is a little bit different, where we do not have an RSP pull-out service.
Right.
So let's start from general education. So we have a general education class that does not include support from another adult.
Okay.
And then we have a general education class with collaborative support. So that means that there's another adult in the classroom who pushes in to support students who have IEP goals.
Right. There's not like a different place for it to happen. Like in elementary, it seems like you kind of do your general ed thing, and then it's like, come on team, we're going to the RSP place. Whereas we don't have that. We just have one spot, the gen ed classroom.
No, I think it's really important, and I think that we support this. It's really important to have students in their classes as many minutes as possible throughout the week.
Right.
So we want to make sure that the students are in their classes, getting the instruction, getting the time to work on their assignments, socialization, working with other students, working in groups. In math, they do the stand-up board, so we want to make sure that students have opportunities to practice what they're learning. So with this, when we have a collaborative setting, we have another adult in there who may give support when they need it. Now, if there's a test-taking accommodation, for example, for a student who needs a quieter area to take a test, or maybe have a test question read to them, then they can go out into the hallway and they can have their test questions read to them, or they can work silently in a quiet area out in the hall. So that does allow us to have some flexibility in serving our students.
So you started to bring up accommodations, which is like a whole conversation on its own.
Yes.
But, getting back to, circle back to that, but with this setting, it's like, I'm kind of silly. I just say the magic happens in the classroom. I don't want pull out down the hall. I don't like, sometimes we have to use the hallway because it's just convenient. But I like 36 students all working together with their teacher and with whatever special education support staff we have in the classroom. I think the overwhelming majority of the time, that's the best way to do it.
Absolutely, and we want to support the students in moving towards that independence. So we want them to be independent. We want them to do their work independently.
Yeah.
We want them to be able to participate in the group activities. That's really important in middle school, especially because they're working on lots and lots of skills in middle school. Academics is one, but also just working with other people is another. That's really important to us here.
Yeah, and as they get older, it changes. A 6th grader and the way they're supported might look a little different than 7th grade, but it would look significantly different than an 8th grader, because you mentioned independence. As you get a little older, students react differently to the special education setting as they get older. And sometimes 6th graders don't even know or don't even realize what's going on. It's just very natural. In 8th grade, sometimes they start to feel like, oh, I'm getting a little different service than everyone else. Some are very comfortable with that. Some of it want to kind of keep that on the down low. Like they don't want everyone knowing, like, I have extra help.
Yes, and as an 8th grade teacher, I find it so important to make sure that my students know what to expect when they're in high school. So in high school, as you stated, they do have a collaborative setting in general education. So it's very much analogous to what we do here. So we really encourage the students to use their supports as much as possible. So that they can get the best out of their academics, so they can succeed. Self-advocacy is such a huge and important part of academics, academic learning, that in those collaborative classes, it allows students to be able to advocate for themselves and get the support they need right on the spot.
Even to the point where you often, and I think some other teachers do it occasionally, but you often invite your students actually to their IEP meeting.
I invite 100% of my students to their IEP meetings.
Right.
I'm very, very, very passionate about having students participate in their own meetings. Typically, students who participate in their own meetings understand what their goals are, understand what their accommodations are, and understand the why behind why they have goals and accommodations, which is super important. Also, it helps them be more, probably more accountable to their own learning, and increases autonomy and independence. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm really big on that, because best IEP meetings that I sit in are the IEP meetings where the student is participating and sharing out their thoughts and ideas and feelings and their approval of their goal. And yes, I can make that goal by next year.
Right. So as a case manager and department lead, you're an expert in all areas of the IEP. As an administrator, I have less expertise, and when I think of IEPs, I think the important part to being obviously the present levels, but it's really up to the case manager to work with the teachers to get that. Where I come in is with the goal settings. We have a baseline where the student is, and the goal where we want that student to go, and then with the supplementary aids and services, which is basically this is our plan to make sure the student reaches their goals. And so I don't even know where to start that. Should we?
So I really think it's important for us to talk about where we go next from general education to general education with collaborative support. We also have concepts classes. So when you talk about how we look at a student's present levels and we look at the goals and we look at those accommodations that we're
determines the setting.
Right. So some students are in a concepts class. Those are the classes I teach.
Right.
So those classes are a little bit different. We do align with state standards. Students who are in the concepts classes are also diploma bound. But what we do is we really involve those accommodations in our everyday learning.
Like they're embedded in the class.
They're embedded in the class. We're already doing some of those things. If students need the text read aloud to them, we do things like that. We give them a little extra time to finish their assignments if students struggle with processing. We also use a lot more visuals, I would say, in those classes. And they're great because they allow students not to feel that overwhelming pressure to meet goals or meet dates or do those things when they are feeling like school is overwhelming. So with the concepts classes, students feel like they can participate in their learning and not worry so much about the other things.
Absolutely. So we do concepts for 4 areas. Everyone takes general ed PE and everyone takes a general ed Explorer or elective class, but students might have science, social science, math, language arts. Those are available in concepts. Some students will have all 4, some will have 1 or 2. It just kind of depends on the situation.
Right. It depends on your initial or triennial assessment results.
Yeah.
It depends on how you're doing, so your present levels. It also depends on your processing. So all of those assessment results become clear to us in what is best for the student.
Right.
It's data driven, right? So the data tells us where the student's strengths are, and the data also tells us where the areas of growth are.
Sure.
Student.
So we've got kind of that RSP Gen Ed model. We've got that concepts model, which is small group, still working on grade level things, still diploma bound.
And in 5th grade, they would have called that SDC.
Right.
So fifth grade.
Right, kind of shifts to the concepts.
Would go to concepts what we call it, SDC.
And then we have a small program, we call it our bridge program with Mr. Perkiser too. So that's more of a self-contained environment where students are working more on independent living skills, those types of things.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I don't know what really there is to say about goals and that's actually maybe we should talk about baselines and goals because that's part of what we call our strategic plan. We have a plan that we've put together with our leadership team and presented this to superintendent and cabinet. Like, what's our main focus this year? And a lot of it is on grade level proficiency for our special education students. That's really, if you ask anyone on staff, what are you guys working on? We're on grade level proficiency for our special education students. At least I hope that's what they say. And so with that in mind, we've been paying really close attention to the goals we write because we want to make sure they're addressing grade level standards. It's really important to us. Sometimes we get kids who matriculate here from, the elementary school, and they have very low level, standards that their classes might not necessarily be working on directly, maybe indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
and
talk.
Because we don't have that pull-out model,
Right.
students are expected to.
Exactly. They're expected to work on grade level standards.
In their classes.
That's part of the dignity of special education too. We're supposed to protect that. We don't want one group of kids, working on the periodic table and another group of kids, we're learning about dinosaurs again. That's not the way that works. Everyone's working on the same thing, maybe at a different pace or a different rigor. So let's talk about goals and what we need to do to make sure our students and all of these students are tested by the state on grade level standards. So let's talk about that a little bit.
So for goals, the first thing we're going to do in the IEP is we're going to look at a student's present levels. So in that, the case carrier will reach out to the student's teachers. We'll look at the grades. We'll do observations of the student to see how they're working. What is their process? How do they learn? What are their strengths? Mm-hmm. What are some things that we see that the student may need some support with? In terms of writing the goals, we look at the students' triennial assessment scores. We look at the multidisciplinary report. We look at where the student struggles maybe in processing, visual processing, auditory processing. They might have a learning disability in math. Those are all the things that we look at when we write a goal. The baseline, usually, if they have a goal from the year before, is closely related to the goal from the year before. So we start there. We stay in the same topic. So if it's reading comprehension of explicit and implicit text, then we want to stay within that and write the goal based on the data that we have now. Case carriers do all sorts of assessments before the IEP to determine where the student is. And like I said, teacher feedback from their 6 core teachers is very, very important. Yeah. So when we write the goals, we want to make sure that we're writing a goal that can be met by the student independently. So you might see a goal that says, when given a grade level text and the opportunity to read the text or reread the text with a peer or discuss the text, those are some of the supports that we're giving students. And we're expecting them with those supports and the other accommodations for them, we're expecting them to be able to meet that goal or make progress on that goal independently. That's very important for us. We want to make sure that we're not over supporting students and that they're making that goal authentically on their own. That's really important. And it's good for them, once again, when students are able to come to their own IEP meetings and see the progress that they've made. It's really an uplifting experience for not only us or me as a teacher, but for the parents and the students.
100%.
So goals are very, very important. Yes.
And it's important. It's an area of focus. We're trying to just really make sure we're writing the best possible goals based on where that student is and where we know they need to get. But that typically is a pretty smooth area. Like, I don't hear lots of disagreement. Usually when I'm in a meeting, people are like, that's a great goal, let's do that. Where things start to get real is in the accommodations.
Absolutely.
That's where teachers are like, and parents are like, wait a second, we always got that. And, and as, an administrator or as case manager, you're like, well, this is what the student needs. That's a more interesting conversation for me in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm.
And part of our strategic plan, really to support students who have IEPs, is making sure that those accommodations are truly individualized for each student.
Right.
Because those accommodations are so important. And there's so much more than just an accommodation. Once again, when the student knows their own accommodation, they can advocate for themselves. They know where their strengths are. They know their areas of growth.
Yeah.
And it's really important to make sure that those accommodations are very much targeted toward the needs of the student.
Sure.
Right?
I was thinking streamlined, but target is a way better word.
Yes.
Because you need as many as you need, but they have to have a purpose.
Right.
It's not just because, well, this worked for 50 other kids, so let's give it to the 51st. That's not the best way to do it.
And the beauty of talking about those accommodations at their yearly IEP or sooner or whenever the IEP It's important for the students to be able to say, yes, I'm using that, and yes, it's helping me.
Mm-hmm.
Or, no, I'm not using it, but I could use this.
Right.
So it's important for us to understand that the students really do have specific needs that should be tailored to them. Some experiences that I've had with accommodations, and I think that it will improve the more we have students understand what their accommodations are and be able to advocate for themselves. But I will say that sometimes I receive messages from parents that their student is not receiving their accommodations in the classroom.
That's the most common special ed concern that I get as principal, for sure.
Yes. So as a case carrier, I have to do a little bit of investigating. So I will speak to the parent either via email or by phone. And then I pull the student and ask them, we go through their list of accommodations and we go through the services that they're getting and say, you know, is this happening in your class? Are you doing this? Are you being pulled for tests? Are the support people in your classroom reading the test questions to you? Are you using the computer versus a pencil and paper when your writing is longer than one paragraph? So I go through and I interview the students and make sure that they know that they have access to those, and also are they getting those opportunities? Yeah. And then I meet with the teachers. So then I go to their core teachers and I say, is this student getting what they need? How does this accommodation look in your class? Right. I get all sorts of different answers. And as you can imagine, Mr. Morton, sometimes I have 3 different stories.
Yes. And you throw the parents, instructional aid in there, teachers, and there might be a 4th one. Yeah.
So I have to kind of deduce myself, just look at all of the data that I have and all of the feedback that I'm getting from teachers and students. And sometimes it's just a matter of a student maybe doesn't take the opportunity to be pulled out into the hall to a quiet area to take the test because they may not feel comfortable doing that, or they don't feel like they need it.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that we really, as an IEP team, have to work through. We have to have that open dialogue.
Well, that's it. It's the devil's in the details. You know, a parent goes into Infinite Campus and see their student just failed 2 tests. They know there's, accommodations for testing. They ask their student, are you getting accommodations for testing? And the student's like, no, I'm not. But, it might turn out the teacher offered the first 5 times. The student always said no, and it just kind of drifted off and no one really talks about it anymore. And so it's like, well, why did we say no those 5 times? Well, I was really comfortable with the material and I was doing fine. But then when it got harder, we weren't in the habit of doing that anymore. And things like that happen all the time. So it's usually not, there's no ulterior motives. It's just, hey, we're just kind of doing it the way we did it yesterday. But all of a sudden there's a problem. And it's just a matter of, like you said, the case manager trying to figure out, piece it all together. What's the story here? And
also, there's a couple of things. The first thing is that case carriers work very hard to make sure that all of the teachers have copies of students' goals and accommodations.
Right.
We work really hard at the beginning of the school year before students...
Green binders.
Yes, arrive, that all teachers have copies of the students' goals, has a copy of their accommodations so that they know what their student needs before they walk into that room. That's very important.
Sure.
The other thing is that if the accommodations are not being utilized, it's not a bad or good thing. It may mean that there needs to be some change. Yeah. So when you go from 6th grade to 7th grade, there's going to be some change in expectations, right? When you go to 7th to 8th, there's going to be some change in expectations.
Sure.
And what we want to do is make sure that developmentally are those accommodations appropriate for the student, right? Maybe the student doesn't necessarily need to be pulled out. Maybe the student needs something else to help support them in the class. But unless we have those conversations and unless we can talk about it as a team, knowing that our goal is just to help the student succeed, then we won't be able to change those, or we won't be able to talk it out.
If you're a parent and you see your student struggling in, let's just say math, what's the first step? Is it reach out to case managers, or reach out to counselors, or reach out to teachers, or reach out to me? What do you see as a case manager, as a parent's line of communication?
I would hope that the parent would reach out to that teacher.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I think that open dialogue needs to be there.
Right.
And I think that if you have a question about your students' progress in school, their academics, you definitely have the right to email.
Yeah.
So I would start with the teacher,
and
I would have those conversations.
Right, because it could be a tier 1. And by tier 1, I just mean it could be something that, all kids go through. Whereas it might not necessarily be an IEP issue. If the teacher's like, oh, this is more of an IEP issue, then they'll get you or whatever case manager in the loop.
Absolutely. And I know sometimes parents say that they struggle with working on Canvas and Infinite Campus. And in that case, I think it's really important for parents to reach out to teachers and to say exactly where can I find my students' homework? Where can I find their grades?
Yep.
Where do I look for this?
Sure.
Where do I find the notes?
Right.
All of those things are important. Those are great questions to ask the teachers. If you're not sure, I would definitely say don't be frustrated, because I know that we had to learn Canvas very quickly as teachers.
Yes.
So I know the frustration.
Right.
But it's also, there's a solution to that.
For sure.
And that's definitely open communication with the teachers.
All right. I would like to talk about this all day, but I don't even know if my phone has enough memory, because we're recording to my phone and then we put it on the computer and then I'm going to put it on YouTube. And then we're going to send it out to parents. At least that's the plan. So for my first 2 podcasts. We've got something else. We've got special education night. What we would like is to have a night in the library where parents can come and kind of hear what we have to say, but also have the opportunity to ask some questions and just make sure, it's just good for communication and building some trust. What do we got planned?
November 21st at 6 p.m. at the TMS library.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be here to speak with parents. The community's welcome.
Yep.
And we'd love to communicate with the parents. We'd love to talk. We'd love to answer some questions. We'd love to just have you here so that we know that we are a team. Yeah. And we're working together for the success of all of our students. Yeah, we're going to have a whole panel of different staff members, and that should be great. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone. Well, good luck to me, and because I hope I can get this up on YouTube so parents can actually see this. And thanks for being the guest today. Thank you, Mr. Morton, for allowing me to do this with you. This is really important to me. So a lot of fun. All right, great. Okay, thank you. Was that a nightmare?